Production funding is brought to you in part by A. Reddix and Associates, a healthcare management consulting firm bridging the gap between healthcare policy and the community through education, training, and outreach. Find out more at ardx.net. Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Tonight, a lesson on the Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian tribe and how a man named Walter Ashby Plecker forever changed the relationship between Native Americans and African Americans in Southampton County, Virginia. Please welcome to Another View Chief Walt Red Hawk Brown, Chief of the Cheroenhaka-Nottoway tribe, William Lamb Spread Eagle Howell, War Chief of the tribe, and Dr. Tommy Bozier, historian at Norfolk State University. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Barbara. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Now, I wanted, before we get into the details of Mr. Plecker and kind of what happened, because basically your tribe has experienced what's some called documentary genocide. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of the tribe.
Well, as you're aware, in 1912, Dr. Walter Plecker became the first director of the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Prior to that, there were no birth certificates, and he was a director up until the 1940s, 1946, until his death. But he was part of the eugenics movement, which was a movement about creating one race of people, which was white, and everything else was put in a pot, as Tina Marie would say, and stir it up and call colored. But he went beyond board on that, wherein as far as first Americans are concerned, he changed birth certificates and marriage license. He even put out letters to census takers in 1930 that people such as myself that are first Americans and Native Americans, that he considered us as being bastards, that we were just trying to be Indian to marry into the white race. What's so interesting about that was that in the 30s he gave a presentation in New York City and on eugenics, and there were commanders associated with Adolf Hitler that attended that particular meeting.
But basically, when he was the registrar for the Bureau of Vital Records, he changed the names of Indian people in Southampton County.
Exactly.
Their race from Indian to Negro or colored.
Well, it was referred to as colored. And basically all the tribes in Virginia in the early 1900s were referred to as colored, okay? Then after the 1924 Racial Integrity Act, everything that was in that colored bowl became Negro, okay? And that's one of the reasons why in 1968 the Supreme Court overthrew that Racial Integrity Act and gave Native Americans the right, if they were born before July 1960, to come forward to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and correct those records that had been changed.
But now your tribe was in Southampton County well before all of this.
Of course.
Okay.
Matter of fact, our history really dates back, according to some archaeologists, to 900 AD. Well, we have a archaeological dig that was done in Southampton County, which dates back, carbon dated, to 1580. In that particular dig, it's called the hand site dig, and it's called catalog 44SN22. 131 skeletal remains of my ancestors were dug up, and they're now laying in shoe boxes in the Smithsonian. One of the goals that we have with our Caddis-Harite town that we're putting together is to have those reinterred, brought back to the county. But what's so interesting about that is that one of the grave remains has been carbon dated to be a colonial lady, about 25, 26 years old. And in her grave, it was 6 foot buried, 6 foot down. There was her sewing kit, her comb, and also the scissors, which are on file at the Department of Historical Resources in Richmond, Virginia. So the history is documented. We are the only tribe in the Commonwealth of Virginia that ever had a gubernatorial mandated special census. As you know, the census is done every year starting 1790, every 10 years. There was a special census done in Southampton County, in Cortland, Virginia, at that time was called Jerusalem, wherein the trustees of the reservation went out and actually recorded the names of individuals living on the reservation, even though they didn't document everybody living there, because they coined this term matrilineal. And if the woman was a mulatto, or if the woman was referred to as free people of color, and if the male was a Cheroenhaka-Nottoway, they didn't count the children. So they coined matrilineal instead of patrilineal. But the history is very rich there in Southampton County. Now,
War Chief Howell, if someone looked at you right now, they would say that you were African American, would they not? Now, your grandfather, though, was supposed to have been, according to records.
Well, he was.
Oh, he was the last. Well, no, but according to, he wasn't the last of the Nottoway, of the Cheroenhaka-Nottoway tribe, though. Tell us about him.
Well, my grandfather, he passed away in 1960, and I was born in 1947, and he married. It was about a black woman, and they had one child, which was my mother. But I had a chance to meet him, and because I was a young fellow when he passed away, and he was kind of a quiet man. He didn't hardly say anything, and now it's coming clear as why he was so quiet, because what happened to his people. And
did he talk to you about your heritage?
No. Yeah. I used to ask my mother, I said, why is my grandfather so quiet? He never had much to say. And it's coming pretty clear to me as why he was so quiet.
Because at that time, they did not talk about being Indians because you could be jailed, correct?
Exactly. There was a lot of bad things that could have happened to you if you were native and if you were caught off the reservation. In some cases, you could be shot on sight. Okay. But getting back to William Lamb, who Paramore and Floyd Painter, Paramore wrote the history of Southampton County, said was the last Cheroenhaka-Nottoway riding a bicycle in Cortland. Again, we know that was not true because William Lamb Howard, who was my war chief, is his grandson. But that's typical of what happened to first Americans in the Commonwealth. How things were done to actually change, not only to change one's race, but to change one's ethnicity, to take away their traditions, to take away their cultures, etc. And I'd like to go back to the 1808 Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian census to my fifth foster great-grandmother, who was Queen Edith Turner. Her name was really Wane Runsira, but the whites called her Turner. And the names, the colonial names, were given to us the same basically as the slave mentality.
The slaves were, yeah.
If your mother was a slave and living on a reservation, that means your child was a slave and that you took on the name of the master. So what had happened with native people, we didn't have colonial names. We had native names. My fourth great-grandmother's name was Carahoot. That was her native name. But when they did the census, they pinned her as being Mary Polly Whitson, who married Pearson Turner and became Mary Turner and went over to Artistown in 1825 along with the Bozeman, the Browns, the Artists, the Boones, and the Whitsons, and just stayed there until the early 1990s.
So if you look at the records, then you would think that there would be no Indians in Southampton County, of Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indians, but we know that there are. So when did this shift change for people to start researching and accepting their native heritage?
Well, I give you an example of my family. My grandfather had 18 kids, okay? And he always shared with us of a native heritage. His wife was Ophelia Rogers. That was my father's mother. She was the daughter of Alex Rogers, that is listed on the 1808 Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian census, who was tried for murder in 1820 and found guilty of second-degree murder. Did 12 years of hard labor, got out, and went into Nansemond County, married, and went over to Hertford County. But at that time, native people could not testify for each other. I have the whole court case. It was really self-defense. Now, native people, my people, were classified as mulatto. Okay. Now that was a term that not necessarily mean half white, half black, or half Indian, half white, or half Indian, half black. It was a term that the colonials created back in the early 1700s, and in reality, in many cases, it means purebred Native American. And that term mulatto, I mean, the first one was 1824, the first Racial Integrity Act, 1824, and then 1924 was the last one in Virginia that was brought about during the Pleckerism. So when you're doing genealogical searches, unless you can talk to your ancestors, your parents, your grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and I tell people when I do presentations, talk to your people and ask from whence came I, so I can know how far I still have to go, okay? Because Go ahead.
Let me ask Dr. Bozier. Talk to me about the relationship then, as Indians started to assimilate into other cultures because they weren't recognized on their own. What was happening back then?
Yes, and especially when I was growing up, it was standoffish between the Indian Native American community and the African American community because of what had happened to them with past relationships, and the Plecker and Dr. Plecker's very active role in the 1920s. So there was, and of course that has always been the case in the history of any organization. The majority group tend to divide those minorities and keep them separated.
But is the relationship any better? Has it changed?
Sure, the relationship is better. A lot of us as first Americans were amalgamated into schools for free people of color. Okay, I remember my first time going to school. I walked 2.5 miles a day round trip to a school called Diamond Grove School, founded in 1919 under the Rose Wall. Okay, it was another school that my parents and them went to out of Artisttown. Then it became the Rose Wall School in 1919. It ended in 1957. Okay, so I had to walk to this school, and I walked back and forth. So there's an amalgamation not only between free people of color and native people. There was an amalgamation also between colonials. I mean, that happened. Matter of fact, that was one of the things that William Byrd, who was involved in the dividing line between Virginia and North Carolina, and Alexander Spotswood, was trying to amalgamate native people with other races to get rid of the Indians. Now, when you look at the Byrd papers, and you would read his diary on April the 7th, 1728, he actually visited our reservation in Jerusalem, Cortland, Virginia. And what's so interesting about that, he described how our people look. He said the young men came out and their faces were painted and they made all kinds of grotesque figures and they danced for him to the sound of a gore drum stretched tight with an animal skin. Then he said the young women came out and they were tall and shapely and dressed in their finery. Their hair was braided, and they had white and blue conch shells in their hair that hung like locks and around their neck. And then they had wrapped around their body a match coat, which was red and blue, which is a shawl, that fitted loosely about their body, that their mahogany skin shone through. Then he went. Let me get this point. He went on to say that these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. Unquote. That's a quote that he made.
So that was the whole goal, was to try to bleach out, as they say.
Yeah, but it kind of tells you that first Americans were a rich brown people. They were mahogany in color.
How many Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indians are there today?
We have 282 in our tribe.
282.
That can do a paper trail from a genealogical aspect back to an ethnohistoric Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian surname. That's the only. If you read the Constitution and bylaws on our website, the only way you can join the tribe, you can't say, "Well, I'm Cheroenhaka-Nottoway, I got the blood, I'm going to join the tribe." You have to show us a paper trail.
You have to be able to trace it.
Yeah.
Now, and Dr. Bozier, I want to turn to you on this part, because if the records say, you know, the birth certificate says Negro, the marriage certificates, et cetera, how do you work past that to prove the
the government is very sympathetic today in light of what happened to the Native Americans in the 1920s in Virginia in particular. So the federal government and even the state, well, at least the state government is very, very sympathetic about that. But I think there's still a pushback as far as the federal government is concerned in extending recognition to them. And even as I've done research in the various county censuses over the years, I had a very frustrating time in coming across some people who identified as free black in one instance and even white in other instances. Very seldom are they designated as Native Americans, but you see that and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And I know some families who are present-day families, well, I won't mention the family, but because those families are descendants that I know, it probably was a Native American aspect to that confusion
to the family
in the early 19th century. Yes.
What you have state recognition?
Yes, we have state recognition.
And you're going for federal. Okay.
We're working on federal recognition.
And if you get federal recognition, what does that mean for the tribe?
Well, that provides some additional resources as far as grant dollars and funding for education, et cetera, and also for starting businesses. State recognition, the way it stands now, basically gives us additional access to grants for schools that were originally founded for Native Americans. And I can say this too, also Hampton University, and Hampton University was the second school in the Commonwealth outside of William and Mary and the Brafferton in 1711 that amalgamated Native Americans. They had some 55 different tribes there from 1885 up until 1926. Matter of fact, those buildings and part of the land that Hampton University sits on was given free gratis by an anonymous donor out of Boston.
You know what's really interesting? We called Hampton University because we knew that they had the school, and their response and why they didn't want to come on the show was that they felt that they didn't have enough of the history to be able to speak about it.
Well, I would debate with them on that because there are a number of books that have been written on it, and actually I have a list of all the tribes that attended Hampton University during that period. And
go ahead.
The cemetery out there.
The cemetery out there
will tell you quite a bit. Yes,
exactly.
Okay, I want to get to some of the regalia that you're wearing and so forth. I want to ask War Chief Howell, first of all, what exactly is a war chief? What do you do?
the war chief is like a security officer. You know, anything going on in the tribe wrong, I step in and handle it. If anyone, if they can't do their job, I have to be able to step in and do anybody's job in the tribe.
Oh, okay.
In the absence of the chief, if he can't make it, I step in his absence and do his job. So my job is just like a police officer.
See, I didn't know that.
He's a negotiator also in case we have problems.
Is there a meaning to the feathers in your headwear?
The Chief Brown have done the research.
He's wearing a gustoa.
Okay.
In our Iroquois language, we say gustoa. And War Chief, he has one feather. I have three
right,
feathers.
I noticed
okay.
that, yeah.
But we didn't wear the long flowing head feathers. Many of us in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, early 1800s rather, ran around bare chested and just a breechcloth. Okay, men and women. So this is something that has been promulgated by way of television and Hollywood. But Western tribes out west, they wore the long eagle staffs. Yes,
okay.
I mean with the eagle feathers and the eagle bonnet. But we didn't wear that. We were.
Your people were hunters.
Yes,
and fishermen.
Yes,
correct?
exactly. And farmers. We raised hogs. We trapped. We cured hides, and we hunted and we fished. And the ikiing, the women did all the work.
The women did the work.
We had a great society, didn't we?
You know, I'm gonna get you for that one. Now, I made the mistake of almost touching the staff. Talk to me about
my
that.
Staff.
Yes, your staff.
Well, one of the things. This is not an eagle staff. This is my chief's hawk staff.
Okay.
The eagle staff is like our U.S. flag, and it's normally handled by the iniha, which is men in our Iroquois language. Also, the drum. Normally women don't drum, but some tribes have a women's group that drum. But normally the men do the drumming and the women they sing in the background.
Do the singing.
Right.
So
that's a part of our tradition and a part of our culture, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do in the tribe. We're trying to rekindle and bring back to life our traditions and our culture. And that's one of the reasons why we recently acquired 100 acres of our former 41,000 acres of reservation land granted to us by the House of Burgess in 1705, and we're putting up what we call a Katasharai town, which is a Palisade interactive Native American village, a tribal education center, and a museum, of which we're going to be putting artifacts in, etc.
And this is in Southampton County, where you were originally
right.
done. And you're also having a powwow.
Yes,
that's coming
we have a powwow July the 24th and the 25th. It's a celebration of the green corn harvest when the roasting years are ready. So come out and get a ear of corn, etc. But this is our 9th annual powwow that we've done at the Southampton County Fairground in Cortland, Virginia. But this is really the 15th powwow. We do powwows in Nottoway County because that's where we had first ethnohistoric contact with the colonials when they were looking for the lost colony in Manioc in 1608 at a village called Tamahitin in Nottoway County. And that's the second Saturday of October. Then we do a powwow also at First Landing Foundation Historical Villages at Fort Story, October the 19th, November the 19th and November the 20th. November the 19th is a school day. We did that last year and had
and you bring students.
Yes.
And is that the way that you're teaching young people and teaching the newer generations about your tribe?
Yes. And one of the concerns we have is that it's the lack of history relevant to the SOLs pertaining to Iroquois speakers. And getting back to our language that was recorded by John Wood, professor of mathematics at William and Mary in 1820. Thomas Jefferson bought the language in August of 1820. He thought we were Algonquin speakers, so he sent it to Peter de Pontier, a student of Indian languages in Philadelphia. And we have letters of interchange between Jefferson and Peter de Pontier, where de Pontier told Jefferson that our language was unequivocally Iroquois, that the dialect was similar to the Mohawk, the Cayuga, the Nida, and the Tuscarora. And I walked the language, and I just spoke to you in a few words a few minutes ago. But we have a very rich heritage in Southampton County, and we do refer to ourselves as the Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian Tribe of Southampton County, Virginia, because that's where all the court documents are, to include the Jeremiah Cobb court case that took place in 1849, and Judge Rich Baker dropped the gavel in 1851 and awarded us $818.82. A lot of money.
A lot of money back in that time.
Yeah, exactly. So we always said that if the Commonwealth of Virginia, by way of the Chancery Superior Courts of Southampton County, awarded us $818.82 in 1851 as a tribe, and there's never been any law, policy, or act to negate that, then who's going to tell us that we're not recognized?
That you're not recognizing.
So that's what we took to the General Assembly.
So today, what is the relationship like between African Americans and Native Americans in Southampton County? And we got less than a minute.
Yeah, if you come to my powwow, you'll see that it's great.
Okay.
Because it's about a 50-50 split there, okay? And there's an amalgamation, as I said earlier, not only between African Americans, but also with Caucasians also. But when you come to our powwow, it is a, as Jesse Jackson would say, a rainbow coalition. Okay, you see a hue of color out there. Okay, not only in regalia but also in complexion. It's a beautiful time that we have. We're drumming, we're dancing, we're singing praises and dancing to the Creator that we refer to as Cheroenhaka-Nottoway in our language. We say Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Wintika, which is the Great Spirit.
Okay,
yeah.
Let me remind folks again: the 9th annual Cheroenhaka-Nottoway Indian Powwow and Gathering. It is July 24th and 25th, 10 to 7 at Southampton County Fairgrounds in Cortland. And if you want more information, you can go to Cheroenhaka-Nottoway.org. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you so much for having us, Barbara. Really appreciate it.
It's fascinating history, and
really
I'm glad
appreciate
to know
it.
about it.
And it's good to see the good doctor again. He probably don't recognize me, but I'm also an alumni of Norfolk State University. Okay.
Ah, there we go. Thank you. And when we
I left
come
there
back,
in 70. You probably weren't even there then.
all right, Chief, we got to go.
Oh, thank you so
much.
much.
Back, melodic voices from Africa. But first, here's what's happening in Hampton Roads. Don't go so hard. You're not done yet. You're not. As part of the Virginia Arts Festival this year, patrons were treated to the melodic sounds of the African Children's Choir. Our Lisa Godley caught up with them during a concert at Norfolk Academy and discovered that their energy, talent, and enthusiasm cannot be ignored.
Ladies and gentlemen, the African Children's Choir.
They range in age from 8 to 11 and are thousands of miles away from home. If they're homesick, it doesn't show. How old were you when you sang with an African Children's Choir?
I was 9 years old.
You were 9 years old?
Yes. That was in 1993. That's when I joined the choir.
What was it like for you being 9 years old and away from your family? And
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going to different places, seeing new things that I'd never seen before. And singing, I was happy. You know, I enjoy music, so that was very nice.
so they took care of your schooling? And
When I went back home, they paid for my 6th, 7th, 8th, and 10th grade up to high school. I graduated high school, and they still paid for my university.
The choir's performances enable them to raise money not only for their education, but for the education of thousands of other African children, enabling them to break the cycle of poverty.
All the funds that we raise from here go back and help other 8,000 children in Africa.
Wow.
Yes.
You said 8,000?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Annette Nabale also performed with the choir as a child.
To share with the rest of the world the great need, the great promise, and the great potential of Africa's children.
I enjoyed meeting new people, and I also love learning to eat different types of foods and seeing different places. Like we went to the Legoland, we went to many fun fairs, swimming, so those were very wonderful experiences for me.
And the Batoro believed that if their sons dance very well, they would make good husbands.
The chaperones speak on the children's behalf and are living proof of what can be accomplished when given the opportunity. Whether they're playing an instrument, dancing, or singing, the children give it their all. Currently, there are two choirs on the road performing, the East Coast group that came to Hampton Roads as part of the Virginia Arts Festival and the West Coast group. But regardless of their location, their mission is the same, to enhance not only their lives, but the lives of thousands of others, securing a better future for all. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And before we close this evening, I'd like to say a very special thank you on behalf of the Another View staff to the Hampton Citizens Unity Commission for awarding Another View a 2010 Unity Award for our efforts in improving diversity in Hampton Roads. We are proud to accept this honor, and we will continue our efforts to bring understanding between the races through honest and compelling dialogue. And let me invite you to attend the Mind, Body, and Spirit Experience for Women to be held on June 12th from 10 to 3 at St. James United Methodist Church, also in Hampton. I'm serving as the MC, and I hope you will join us. Next week, we'll bring you a Best of Another View episode, Pop Culture and the African American Community. We'll see you next time for Another View.
Production funding is brought to you in part by A. Reddix & Associates, a healthcare management consulting firm bridging the gap between healthcare policy and the community through education, training, and outreach. Find out more at ardx.net.